Hello? It's okay. Good afternoon. My name is Deepawali and I work from Minister of Forest and Environment in Nepal. I'm in the delegates team of Minister of Forest and Environment. We are here on behalf of Sathai team. Sathai Nepal is working for the climate justice with a slogan, Voice for Climate Justice. By this documentary, which we are going to play here, Sathai wants to draw the attention of a global people to the impact of climate change in mountain, particularly the mountain women. Although the effect of the climate change are being felt by all the mountain people, not everyone is affected equally. People do not have the same capacity and uh, same capacity to cope and adapt the climate change. Meaning, men and women are differently affected by the changes because they have a different roles in society. And I must say that the women are more vulnerable to climate change. So this documentary documented the climate crisis through the upland and lowland linkages, meanings from the highland to the lowland. And this documentary is featured in the area of Fokshundo and Helambu of area of Nepal. So please enjoy this video. It has a very deep meanings. We want to draw the global attention to the climate change impact in mountains and particularly the women. Thank you.
Women and nature and destruction. This connection is so intricate from the high mountains and the middle hills to the plains of the south. Not many places in Nepal been spared from the destructive forces of nature. As a result of global warming, the snow on mountains is less visible and the peaks are revealing their black rocks. This is no longer big news, particularly in Nepal. What makes big news today is the melting of the Himalayas and glaciers, unseasonal rains, floods and landslides, and how women and children are affected by the disasters. These are some of the biggest questions. The snow that has been accumulated for thousands of years in the Everest region has melted in a few years, in our own lifetimes. On March 8th, 2022, leading women from Nepal trekked to Kala Pathar in the Everest region to International Women's Day. The main agenda was to make the world aware of the impending climate crisis. Women and nature nature and destruction. This connection is so intricate. From the high mountains and the middle hills to the plains of the south, not many places in Nepal have been spared from the destructive forces of nature. As a result of global warming, the snow on mountains is less visible and the peaks are revealing their black rocks. This is no longer big news, particularly in Nepal. What makes big news today is the melting of the Himalayas and glaciers, unseasonal rains, floods and landslides, and how women and children are affected by the disasters. These are some of the biggest questions. The snow that has been accumulated for thousands of years in the Everest region has melted away in a few years, in our own lifetimes. On March 8th, 2022, leading women from Nepal trekked to Kala Patthar in the Everest region to mark International Women's Day. The main agenda was to make the world aware of the impending climate crisis with the slogan Women United for Climate Justice. They wanted to draw the attention of the world to the unexpected glacier melts and other natural hazards that risk the lives and livelihoods of the people of the Himalayas. They noticed that with the decreasing snow lines in the world famous mountain range of Nepal, the major source of water in the country is also declining rapidly. And it seems that this change will not only impact Nepal but also the neighboring countries. The team of women came up with the Kala Patthar Manifesto, a 10-point declaration to draw the world's attention to the effects of climate change on women living in high mountains and plains.
ग्लोबल वार्मिङको लागि जुन जुन देशहरू एउटले भूमिका खेलेको छन् सबैलाई उत्तरदायी बनाउनुपर्छ भन्ने नै त्यो पेरिस कन्भेन्सनको मूल मन्त्र पनि रहेको छ।
In the Madhes region, unseasonal floods, droughts due to extreme heat, and wildfires have grown in numbers. These problems have directly affected the lives of women, with the elderly and children facing more problems. As more men go abroad to make ends meet, the burden of work has fallen on the shoulders of women. This October, the team of Sat Sathe was scheduled to trek to Folksondo Lake in Karnali district. Suddenly, the situation became treacherous due to incessant rain, snowfall, and fog. This caused the death of many people, disrupted the lives of others, and destroyed crops. The years-long project to bring water from Melamchi River through a tunnel to quench the thirst of the people of Kathmandu is finally coming to completion. However, the amount of water in the river's headwater in Helambu is decreasing. Last year, a landslide caused a glacier burst, resulting in a 30-kilometer settlement in Helambu getting covered in sand and mud. Even today, whose eyes won't get teary after hearing about the sufferings of the people and the devastation in the area?
बर्खाको बेला त हामी के खाने कसरी बस्ने भन्ने नै छैन कि हामी त भोकै बस्नु ल हाम्रो सन्तान चाहिँ अब अरूको देखा नि अब बच्चाले त मान्दैन।
Assets worth billions were destroyed in minutes.
माछा घर कसको घर हो तिर्सो परेर आउँदो।
However, the loss can't be counted in numbers alone, for we, as a nation, lost a lot more. The biggest loss was that of hope.
जलवायु परिवर्तनले गर्दाखेरि पहिरो गएर यति लामो क्षति र यति लामो पहिरो भएको यो सायद संसारमै यो बेग होला। अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय समुदायले यो बेगको क्षतिपूर्ति यहाँको पब्लिकहरुको, किसानहरुको, यहाँको व्यवसायिकहरुको, यहाँको सम्पूर्ण किसानको आर्थिक स्थितिलाई एउटा चाहिँ हालसम्म भएको क्षतिको क्षतिपूर्ति उहाँहरुले बेहोर्नु पर्यो।
Just as the pillars of the houses of Helambu are broken, so are the hearts of the victims of the disaster. Neither the victims of the disasters in the mountainous region, nor the residents of Dolpa, Madhesh, and the residents of Helambu know that global climate change is the actual cause of these unfortunate incidents. This is why they have become voiceless. Currently, many efforts are being made to reduce the impacts of climate change. However, the magnitude of the problem is such that most seem inadequate. Nonetheless, efforts are ongoing. What is required at the moment is the initiative of the international community, a collective and strong effort to help return the smile to the faces of the victims of the disasters.
Losses and damages due to climate change in nature and people are growing. We propose to work together to enhance the adaptation capability of vulnerable communities, particularly women, to raise awareness, address the root causes, and seek climate justice.
We need to come together and become the voice of the voiceless, the face of the faceless, and the hope of the hopeless.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention. We have, is it working? We have Dr. Siddhartha Vajrasari in the online platform, so he will give his some comment on this video documentary because he is one of the expert of this movement. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Deepaji. This is Siddhartha Bhattacharya. By background, I am an ecologist working in this field almost for the 30 years. First of all, thank you for projecting this document voice for the climate justice. This documentary is basically a symbolic representation of present impact of climate change, particularly focusing on melting Himalayas, erratic rainfalls, floods and landslides, loss and damage issues. Developing countries need finance both to adapt or build resilience to climate change impacts such as flood, drought, storms, etc. The countries that have contributed the least to the climate change, yet are the most vulnerable to its impact, particularly women and the children, are most affected. The documentary clearly projected this issue. This is the fundamental question of climate justice. This is what we are trying to raise here. The mounting toll of climate disaster in vulnerable countries are presently growing annually. So all the countries should come together for the climate finance and support these people who are voiceless. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. If there is any questions, we will be happy to respond.
We can't see any questions here in the room. So with that, I think we'll say thank you very much. And yeah, we'll close this part of the session. And next we'll be hearing from one of our scientists. So stay tuned for that.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if you guys want to stick around. I'm going to talk a little bit about adaptation, and actually, your movie was a very great introduction to the topic. So thanks a lot for that. It's very powerful images, and very in touch with what scientists are also trying to address everywhere in the world. And I think the solutions have to come from local community and has to be just done in a just manner. And activities like yours are extremely important. So thanks a lot for this video. I will jump onto what we've seen and make a step back and reiterate what we have seen in the video here, which are the issues faced by local communities in mountain environments. And I'm going to add a little bit what maybe scientists from all over the world can do to help adaptation in mountains. So when we think about the impacts of the cryosphere, because here we are in the cryosphere pavilion, and when we think about the impact of the cryosphere on communities, these main topics are coming together. So we have sea level rise, which is also prominently here displayed on site. But we also have topics of water security, because when glaciers melt and snow melts, there is less water available seasonally for downstream communities and for agriculture. And the communities in the mountain regions are relying a lot, especially in dry areas like these, on snow and ice melt from the mountains. Then there is the topic of natural hazards. We have seen in the video floods, which are related either to landslide or to glacier and snow melt related landslides. So here, this is an example of a lake in Nepal, Imja Lake, which has formed because of glacier retreats, which leaves a moraine, and then water is gathering in front of the lake. This is called a proglacial lake, and these lakes are actually highly susceptible to create sudden floods, which we call glacier outburst floods. And another topic I'm going to address today is that glaciers are also part of the landscape, and in some regions are part also of the tourism. It's true in Nepal, but it's also true in European Alps. And so today I'm going to focus on the mountain-related topics. So people are thinking about it also from a scientific perspective. And these adaptation measures, which are lived by the communities locally and are part of their daily life, they are also studied by social scientists and natural scientists like me. And this is a study who has counted, okay, how many of these adaptation measures have been actually documented in the scientific literature. And you can see that these are all the mountain nations in the world, and Nepal and India for high mountain Asia are countries where these adaptation measures are needed and documented. And it's also true for some mountain regions in the Andes, with Peru as another highlight for reasons I'm going to talk about in a minute. So let's start with one example, not from Nepal, but from Peru. So this is one example of a lake which is called Palcacocha in Peru. And you might wonder why there are some tubes coming out of it. And some of you might say, okay, maybe it's actually for hydrology, and we are maybe pulling some water out of the lake to give this water to for example, small-scale agriculture downstream. This might be one of the reasons, but here in this case, actually, people are trying to shield and protect themselves from something else. So this lake, Palcacocha, is located upstream from one of the largest cities in the region, which is called Huaraz. It's the capital of the region in the Cordillera Blanca, in a region which is called Ancash in Peru. And this lake is directly threatening the city downstream. And this is not an hypothetical threat, actually. It happened already in 1941. So this happened in the early stage of glacier retreat, where the lake was very big and the glacier is very large. A sudden flood occurred in December 41. And here you see a plane imagery from just after the event, and you can imagine here this huge flood, as we've seen in the video, which has destroyed a lot of infrastructure. Moving on to another topic, moving on to Ladakh in India here. This is a very special ice structure here, which is called an ice stupa, according to the name these original structure have. And these are a rather original way to also deal with water security in the dry season. So they are using artificial drainage system to actually create these structures during the winter, which then release water at the beginning of the spring season where agriculture needs it most. And scientists also are helping to make these structures useful for the downstream community. I mean, this is kind of anecdotic, but it's also a symbol of what might be needed in the future to help local communities. Going to Nepal now, this is one example also of a region in the Khumbu region where populations are relying on different strands to survive. So here you have pastoral communities, you have communities relying on agriculture, you have communities relying on tourism to survive. And each of these communities have different stresses and different problems to face. And so adaptation measures in these regions have to be run by people from the local communities and local government, driven by what we've seen in the movies, and have to be adapted to the problems at hand, because not everyone has the same kind of issues. If you have downstream for a potential flood, you have other issues than if you are trying to irrigate your field, like in this image on the right. And now making a very big jump towards the alpine regions, where people have, in comparison, smaller problems, but problems as well. So there are structures which are actually relying on mountain glaciers for tourism. And so these regions are actually places which have focused on offering a service to people, which is, okay, you are going to go to the glaciers and our glaciers are retreating. These locations um, are actually offering something very different today. And so also in this study, they are talking about adaptation measures that these people have taken to compensate for it. So one example is that in a location where you have built infrastructure to actually go see the glacier, and the glacier has disappeared, what you are going to have to do instead is maybe shift the focus toward our education, for example, and make um, uh, build a small museum about glacier change and try to raise awareness about the problem. Or maybe you are going to transform to a more restaurant or culture driven location instead of a purely glacier scenic location. And in the Alps also, like in tourist infrastructures like these ones, are actually relying on technological measures such as very expensive and actually polluting blankets to protect the glaciers from melting, to preserve these structures which are really only serving tourism. And here, this is really, from my perspective, uh, a very, very unsustainable way to actually deal with the problem of glacier disappearance in the Alps. It's only like delaying the problem but doing nothing to solve it. And I'm going to skip through all these examples of adaptation measures in the Alps, which are actually part of the problem. So here, this is German, but the ski areas, they have this issue now in the European Alps, that they are actually spending energy to save the glaciers, but by spending energy, they are actually emitting CO2 in the atmosphere, which further enhances the warming. And then you have this kind of crazy situations where you are emitting and helping the earth to warm to protect the small piece of glacier ice that you would like to save. So from these examples, we learn that adaptation measures often happen in very concentrated areas where there is awareness of the problem. And many areas in Nepal, in Peru, are actually not even aware of the problem. And so what we observe is that communities are going to adapt only after the problem has occurred. So for example, a flood happens and then we are going to protect against it. Or we have 2 years of drought and then we start to do something about it. So this is the second point, which means that you have a stimuli, you have something which makes you adapt, and often it comes with suffer, with actually loss of lives and hunger, and only after we try to build something around it, and this is too late actually. So the adaptations could actually be much more prepared if we have a will to do it. And of course, I am a scientist and I'm not going to solve many of the issues which are really related to local situations, such as you need political will to actually make these changes. My point is more here to say that we have enough information already to to say to say with security that we actually need adaptation in the mountain regions. And I think my role could be stopped here already, because I'm going to have a few slides saying that the information is here, the knowledge is here, and what we need is people like we have just seen in the video before to actually implement them and push for their implementation in mountain regions. Still, I'm going to have a few slides now explaining that the information is there. So I'm going to go, because it's a bit too long and I'm going to skip through a few slides and actually go towards the most important messages quite quickly, which is we have the science, we have awareness about climate change, it's time to act now. So what I was about to say here is that we know, so I'm going fast through the slides because I don't want to go into the details, it's not very important. We know that glaciers are going to continue to melt. We know that the more we warm the atmosphere, the more glaciers are going to melt. We know that when glaciers are melting, they are going to create more proglacial lakes. So we are able to put on a map and to point on a map where glacier lakes are going to become a threat to downstream populations in next 50 years or 100 years. There is uncertainty about this, but this map also is really clearly showing the locations here where we have existing ones, so these are the stars, and in blue dots, these are the ones which are likely to happen in the future. And we already know then in the regions where it's not maybe good to actually settle or start new infrastructures and buildings in these regions, because we know that they are going to become a hotspot for future threats to downstream communities. And so this information can help what we call a no regrets kind of adaptation, where actually we don't do anything else than not doing something new to it. So instead of building new infrastructure, we are actually aware of the problem in the future and we try to address it from the start, so to say. And so all these slides that I've been through very quickly, because I don't want to annoy you with all these details, actually say one thing, that we are already able to close the gap of information thanks to satellite data and the availability of information. Very often these data are available to everyone. also to local communities if they are aware that they are here. And this is, of course, one of the gaps that we are going to close. It's not that because the data is here that the information is actually going to be brought to the local communities. It's not me talking to this audience here. It's not me talking to my students in Austria, which is going to bring this information. We all need the right channels to do that. And so there are uncertainties about our future. One of them is what's happening in the building over there and what the decision makers are going to do with the climate. But the cryosphere is responding slowly to climate change and is already responding to past climate change. And so we already know many things about the future threats in mountain regions. We know that glacier and snow are going to retreat, and as a result, there is going to be a stress on water resources in certain months of the year. There are going to be increased hazards from retreating glaciers, from increased landslides. And we know that that this is going to happen in the next 10 years and over the next, and for longer even. So the next step now is to continue to raise awareness, as we've seen in the video, as I'm trying to do here, as we all have to do then in our communities in mountain regions, and try to overcome the barriers that remain, which are linked to how to make actions based on this information, which is already flooding our minds since 10, 20 years. We are aware of this. How do we increase awareness to local communities to take action? How do we increase the adaptive capacity of local countries? And here the discussions again about loss and damage are very important, because it's going to be a problem about how to fund these changes which are necessary to adapt to these changes, and how to increase institutional support in the countries that need it the most. And here again, the discussion over the next a couple of days are crucial to increase these funding streams. That's it. Thanks for listening, and thanks for the event. I think this closes the event for today, and we have a next event at 6 p.m. later.